Hello everybody, it's the War Hipster here, coming at you with another Contrast Plus painting tutorial from the Dominion box set, and today we are painting the Killaboss on Great Gnashtoof. He's an absolute chonk, he's enormous, and I'm really excited to do him. He's quite a challenge, so it's going to be a lot of fun, and well, let's jump in and start painting him. So he's been primed in grey sear, just like the rest of the set, and the place we're going to be working on first is the Great Gnashtoof, as, well, that's the real meat and potatoes of this tutorial. So, the first colour we're going to be making is a roughly 1-to-1 mix of Darkoath Flesh and Contrast Medium. And the reason we're doing this is, well, it's just to improve the flow as we go around it. And what we want to do is we want to start painting this all over all of the Great Gnashtooth's flesh. Now I'm going to start here at the front and work my way back, and I'm going to do it in sections. So you can see that we've got the kind of reins here. That, for me, this kind of central section just here, that's a section. We've got the face here. It comes all the way around. It just makes it easier for managing the painting as we go. So let's just jump right in and start painting this Darkoath Flesh all over, just like this. As you can see, that contrast medium does weaken out that tone just a little bit, but that's exactly what we want, and it also just helps us get a nice smooth finish. Although to be fair, there are lots and lots of lovely recesses all over this model, so it's actually a lot easier than something that's perhaps got a lot smoother skin. But what we want to do, as I say, is we just want to get this all over all of his flesh, like I'm doing here, and just take it in sections, like divide him up. So for example, there we go. Once we've just got this little bit here done, like that, that is one full section done. So then I can just come over here and do the face as well, like so. Get this all over his ear. Don't want to forget that. And don't worry if you're a bit messy at this stage. You can always neaten it up a bit later on with some more grey sear, should you make any mistakes at this point. Realistically, we just want to focus on that flesh for now and make sure we get that looking nice and awesome. You can do inside the mouth as well. It's not a problem. It's all part of the skin, after all. So with that Darkoath Flesh applied all over, what we now want to do is we want to take some Magos Purple. We want to apply this over the top of that Darkoath Flesh, but what we want to do is we want to leave the slightly paler patches. Now these are going to include areas like this little kind of bit here, and mostly under the tummy, but also kind of the inside of their legs. But what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to do that. So firstly, we're going to take the Magos Purple and we're just going to apply it all over the skin. Like this. Like that. And then what we want to do to make it so it's kind of a little bit thinner and a little bit more blended, but not entirely kind of off the model, as it were. On this leg, for example, here on the inside, what we want to do, you want to paint this Magos Purple all over like this, and then what we do is we wash the brush, and with a clean brush we just lift some of that paint off there, like that. Nice and simple. So you get a much kind of stronger colour where you've just put the Magos Purple on, and then you get slightly lighter colour in those kinds of areas. We mostly want to just kind of get this all over. And it doesn't matter if you don't get this 100% right at this stage, because he's going to be a lot darker. And this bit here is in fact a bit of fabric, which I was foolish not paying attention to the model. Like this. So you just want to do this all over, like I'm doing here, and then we'll come back. So with that done, you should have a Great Gnashtoof that looks something like this. And what we're going to do now is going to work on darkening him down even further, getting all those kinds of blends out into this kind of flesh colour that we've got here, which is almost perfect. So what we're going to do is going to make a roughly 6 parts contrast medium to 1 part Shyish Purple mix. We want this really thin here. What we want to do is basically build this up in layers. So what we're going to do is we're going to we'll start around here on this kind of area. So what we want to do is we just want to start painting this Shyish Purple mix over the top like this on our skin patches that we want to get even darker, like that. But what we do is we wash the brush, and then with a clean brush we just mop up some of that Shyish Purple, like that, just to blend it out so it's getting darker to lighter. And we're going to do this several times. I think 2 or 3 times is what we're going to do. So we want to do it on that kind of thing like that. Similarly on like the back end and well on his face as well. And I would definitely have the kind of product art in front of you, but like for example here on the foot we want to add this Shyish Purple coming up to around about there, like that. Just mop up that excess. Kind of bring it up actually just about as far as that knee, like that. And then we wash the brush with that clean brush where those 2 colours meet. We're just going to mop up some of that and just blend out that transition just that little bit more. Again, just mop up that excess like that. Like that, so you can see it's already starting to work, going from that lighter to the darker. Similarly, like on the top here, for example, we want to do the whole of the tail. I want to bring it down to around about there on the glyph. Like that. Wash the brush. And then when those colours meet, just going to mop up that excess. Like that, just to smooth out that transition. And as I say, we're going to do this like 2 or 3 times, darkening it down. But we just want to be very subtle as we do this, rather than kind of go straight in, because that would be harder to correct. So we do the same thing on this side of the leg. Like that. Wash the brush, smooth out that transition. Very nice. We'll do it on the other side as well. So all over the top here, coming down, do the whole tail. Grab a bit more of that Shyish Purple. Come down to around about there. Like that. Wash the brush. And then smooth out that transition. Just by kind of mopping it up and moving it up towards where we want it to be darker, so it gets that fade. So with that done, your Great Gnashtoof should be looking somewhat like this. So we're just going to now do it again, that exact same mix again. 6 parts contrast medium to 1 part Shyish Purple. Only this time, rather than doing the whole of those sections that we've just done, we're going to do a little bit less of them. So for example, back here on this leg, what we're going to do is we're going to paint this Shyish Purple mix, going all the way up to around about there this time. Like that. And then we wash the brush. And then with that clean brush, we just smooth out that transition. like that. So you should see it's now even darker. Similarly again, on that top section, we've got this area around here. Rather than coming all the way down to the glyph, we're going to come down to around about there, like that. Wash the brush, and then smooth it out. Just by running that clean brush, like that. Kind of like a buffing motion, as it were, like so. And so with that done, you should have a Great Gnashtoof that looks somewhat like this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to the next colour of the darkening down, and that is going to be Black Templar. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make a roughly 6 parts contrast medium to 1 part Black Templar, much like we've done with the Shyish Purple. And this is going to apply some real shading to it, but it's not going to be the final step. And what we want to do is we want to make this even kind of narrower than what we did last time with the Shyish Purple. So for example here, we're just going to come all the way over the top like this, and then we're going to wash the brush, and then we're just going to blend out where those two colours meet, just by buffing it away like that. So you get that really nice transitional fade, like so, just like that. Similarly on the foot, we have this Black Templar down here, quite narrow, as you can see, just around this section like that. Wash the brush and buff it out. And with that done, we're now going to do one last thinned down Black Templar coat. And this is going to be the narrowest one yet. So once again, 6 parts contrast medium to 1 part Black Templar. And what we want to do is we want to just take this to the absolute extremes. Of our details that we want to be really dark. Like the feet, like that. And then once again, wash the brush and just blend out that transition where the colours meet, just like that. Similarly on the back here, do the whole tail, like that. And we want to just kind of keep this Black Templar towards the top of the Gnashtoof, like that. Wash the brush, then just blend out that transition just a little bit, just buffing motion once again, like that. So you see, comes right down into that really dark, like that. So with that done, our Great Gnashtoof Flesh is very, very, very nearly finished. What we are going to do is just going to add a few little spot highlights, because we've done so much blending down that actually we don't need to do like full highlights and then shading and all that kind of stuff. We just need to add a little bit of spot here and there just to really kind of pop and kind of just pick out those little individual details. Now the colour we're going to be using is Slaanesh Grey. And what we want to do is we basically just want to pick out areas like there's little pimples here and there. So there's one there, and there's one here on the knee, and there's one just there, like that. What we do want to do is we want to highlight the rune that's been carved into its flesh. Like that. Similarly down here, we will do the whole of that room. That's not it. But down here in the darker areas, what you want to do is you just want to pick out all the sharp edges. So we've got this little bit here and a little bit there. A little bit here like this. We don't want to highlight any of the furry, well, hair or the claws with this colour, because they are going to be a slightly different highlight. So with that Slaanesh Grey applied, what we're now going to do is we're going to take some Volupus Pink, and as you can see, I've recovered the kind of gums and the tongue with some grace here. I'm going to be using it in there, but also we're going to be using it around the glyph as well. So we take this Volupus Pink, and we're just going to very carefully run this into the recess around that glyph. Like this. And similarly on the tongue and the gums, I'm going to add this Volupus Pink all over. And with that Volupus Pink applied, we're then going to take some Aggaros Dunes. I'm going to use this to colour in the teeth. And with that done, what we're now going to do is going to take some black Templar. I'm going to use this to paint in all of the strings and things. So this is just, again, we're just still focusing on the mount at the moment. We will get to the Killaboss himself, but we're going to be focusing on areas like this little bit here, and the reins and the various things strapping the armor pieces onto the mount. So with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to make a roughly 2 parts Gore-Grunta Fur to 1 part Wyldwood mix. I'm going to use this all over the Gnashtoof's clothes. So we've got this kind of fabric that's hanging off all around him. I want to get this mix all over. Now it doesn't matter that we've done Darkoath Flesh over this bit. If anything, it just adds to the effect. Like that. This mix just covers over that absolutely fine. So with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to break up those leather details just a bit so they're not all the same brown, and we're going to be using 2 colours to do this. We're going to be using Militarum Green and Basilicanum Grey. And what we want to do is we'll just basically alternate between the colours so that we basically take some Militarum Green, and on this kind of bit of fabric here, we're just going to paint this Militarum Green over the top of it. Like that. We're going to wash the brush. Then we're going to grab some Basilicanum Grey. I'm going to paint this over the top of this large piece just here. Like that. Again, I'm going to take some Basilicanum Grey, paint it over this large piece just here. Like that. And we'll do it on this piece as well. like so. Wash the brush, and then we'll come around the other side. We'll use some Militarum Green here on this one. And with that done, it's still a little bit wet, but don't worry, what we're going to do is going to move on. I'm going to paint in this kind of wooden part of the saddle just here. And the colour we're going to be using is roughly 6 parts contrast medium to 1 part Wyldwood mix. And I'm just going to take that, I'm just going to paint that all over the wood. Like that. And with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to colour in this piece of armour here and this piece of armour just here. And the colour we're going to be using for this first is Retributor Armour. We just want to get this all over these sections. Just like this. And with that Retributor Armour applied, what we're now going to do is going to take some thinned down Runelord Brass. I'm going to use this on the kind of leg armour down here. Like that. And we're also going to use this Runelord Brass to paint in the armour on his head, but not on his neck. And so with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to use some thinned down Iron Warriors. We're going to use it to paint in these last remaining bits of armour back here. We're also going to use this to paint in all the little studs and things on the other pieces, as well as the kind of metal joints, whatever this is supposed to be, on the saddle, well, on that bit of wood. And here are the little other details that you might want to be silver instead of the colours that they are. So for example, on the headgear, we've got this little chain loop here. We can do a silver just to break it up just that little bit. I've got the bolt there as well. Like that. You just want to go around like this with the Iron Warriors. And then we'll come back. So with that done, what we're now going to do is going to shade those metallics, starting with some Fyreslayer Flesh over the top of our gold. So with that Fyreslayer Flesh applied, don't worry that it's still drying at the moment. We're just doing this next work just for the sake of speed. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be shading the Runelord Brass and the silver, the Iron Warriors I should say, with some Basilicanum Grey. Now we will need to do that stuff that is on the gold as well, but as I say, in the interest of time, just thought I'd show you this now. So with that done, we've just got a few base coats left to do on the Greater Gnashtoof, or Great Gnashtoof as it were. And the first one we're going to be doing is Gryph-Charger Grey, and we're going to be doing this on the severed hand, just down here, like that. And we obviously want to make sure that we get the opposite side as well, just by navigating our brush in there, like that. And what we also want to do is we want to paint it over this head, just here. With that Gryph-Charger Grey applied, we then take some Skeleton Horde and apply it to the skull just here. Like that. So with that done, the Gnashtoof part of this tutorial is at what I would call a War Hipster battle ready. However, what we're going to do is we're going to take him up to the next level. I'm going to add some highlights before we move on and paint the kill boss himself. Next way, it makes it quite easy to just focus on him rather than doing all of it at once. So the first colour we're going to be using is some thinned down Dawnstone. I'm going to be using this to add some highlights to all of our black details. Now these are going to include areas such as his fur, like right here. Like that. Just picking out those strands of the hairs. Like so. Similarly, on all of the kind of ropes and things that we coloured in with the Black Templar. Similarly for all these like stitches and things. Like that. And in addition, we've also got the claws. We just want to highlight the edges of. And with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to use some thinned down Steel Legion Drab. I'm going to use this to highlight all of our fabric or leather. And with that done, what we're now going to do is going to take some Karak Stone and add this as a little spot highlight to the sharpest parts in all that fabric. So like the tips of the tears, just like this. As well as the bottom sides. Of like the little holes in the fabric. So with that done, what we're now going to do is going to move on. I'm going to take some thinned down Runelord Brass. I'm going to use this to brighten up these kind of leg plates and the head plate just a little bit. So what we want to do is any on the large kind of open spaces like this bit here, just want to add this Runelord Brass as a relayer like this, just avoiding where that shade has settled. Like that. like that. So you get some of this kind of nicely battered Runelord Brass effect. Similarly up here. We're just doing it on the kind of wider open spaces. So for example, another one is just over here. So this isn't a full edge highlight just yet. And so with that done, what we're then going to do is we're going to take some thinned down Sycorax Bronze, and we're going to use this to highlight our Runelord Brass areas, but also our gold details. So we've got these like this, and now we're doing a full edge highlight here on these sections. Like that. Similarly on these plates. Like this. And with that done, what we now want to do is we want to take some thinned down Leadbelcher. And we want to do very similarly to what we did down here, but on the silver. So you just want to kind of layer up all of the open spaces. Just avoiding those pitted sections like that. So with that done, as a final highlight for all of those metallics, what we're going to do now is going to do a very gentle dry brush of Stormhost Silver. And we just want to be very, very careful here. We don't want to do it all over, just want to do it in certain spaces. This adds a little bit of scratchiness. Just that little bit of extra brightness. And with that done, what we then want to do is take a teeny tiny dot of Evil Sunz Scarlet and apply this to the eyes of our Great Gnashtoof. And with those eyes done, we then want to take some Screaming Skull. I'm going to use this to highlight the teeth. And with that done, we then want to use a teeny amount of Fulgrim Pink as a highlight for the tongue and the gums. So with that done, the Great Gnashtoof is finished. Boy, does it look awesome. Wow. Sometimes even I surprise myself. So what we're going to do now is going to move on, and we are now going to paint the Killaboss himself. And the colour we're going to be using first is Great Camo and Militarum Green, a 1-to-1 mix of the two. And what we want to do is we want to paint this all over the Killaboss's skin. I'm just going to start here on the foot. Just like this. And with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to take some Plaguebearer Flesh. I'm going to paint this all over the top of the skin where we've just painted that Militarum Green and Creed Camo mix. Just like this. And with that done, what we're now going to do is going to create a roughly 2 parts Gore-Grunta Fur to 1 part Wyldwood mix. I'm going to be using that on all of his clothes now, just like we did on the Great Gnashtoof. So with that done, what we're now going to do is going to make a roughly 1-to-1 mix of Wyldwood and Black Templar. I'm going to paint this all over his strings. So we've got the one here, down here on his leg. We've got his belt, we've got the various things tying stuff to him. We just want to get this all over, just like this. And with that done, what we're now going to do is going to take some Black Templar and we're going to use this to paint in the haft of the spear. As well as the boss pole on his back. And with that done, what we're now going to do is going to take some Blood Angels Red. I'm going to use this to paint in 2 things. Firstly, the shield, and secondly, that plume on the top of his helmet. And what we want to do is you just want to get this all over that shield. Don't worry about avoiding the kind of the bits that are going to be metal. So with that done, what we're now going to do is going to take some thinned down Fire Dragon Bright. And we're going to use this to highlight those red details. And this is because we've got a glaze coming up that's going to pull all these red colours together and really kind of thicken out and enrich that red. So we do this highlight now, picking out all of the edges in the red, so that when we do that next contrast glaze, we get the perfect tone. So you just want to go around them like this. And with that done, what we're now going to do is going to make a roughly 6 parts contrast medium to 1 part Flesh Terror's red mix. And we're going to use this now all over the top of those red details that we've just highlighted. So you just want to be very careful here with how much we use on our brush at once, because it can get away from you. So just take small amounts and then just start gently brushing it all over the top of these red details. Just like this. So with that done, don't worry that it's still drying a little bit at the minute, because what we're going to do is going to move on. We're going to paint in this kind of boss banner back here. And the colour we're going to be using is Guilliman Flesh. And what we want to do is you just want to start painting this Guilliman Flesh all over the top. Just like this. And with that done, what we're now going to do is going to create a roughly 1-to-1 mix of contrast medium and Basilicanum Grey. And we're going to use this to do a little bit of darkening down, a little bit of blending. So starting on this kind of bottom bit of skin here, but we're also going to be doing a little bit of this just as a layer on some of these kind of browner pieces, just like we did with the Gnashtoof, just to break up that colour just a little bit. So firstly, we're going to work on that hand. And what we want to do is we want to take this Basilicanum Grey and paint it up to around about there, about halfway. And then we're going to wash the brush. And then just where the colours meet, just going to dab at it, smooth it out. Just like that. Smooth it out just a little bit more. Like so. We can add a little bit more Basilicanum Grey towards the bottom as well, just to make it nice and dark. If you really want to, you can take some out of the pot, just like this, and just towards the bottom, add it like that. Wash the brush, and just kind of, once again, just smooth it out just a little bit like that. Similarly, we're going to take this Basilicanum Grey mix, and we're just going to apply this over some of the leather that the Killaboss is wearing, so like that section there, and we'll do some on this bit here as well. And so with that done, don't worry that it's still a bit wet, because what we're going to do now is going to do the very same thing, but on the top here with a 1-to-1 mix of contrast medium and Volupus Pink. So we paint this contrast medium in Volupus Pink down like this, and then we wash the brush, and then we just soften out that transition area a little bit like that. What we're also going to do is going to use this Volupus Pink around the rune carved into the flesh, just there like that. And we can also, once again, wash the brush, just use it to mop up any mistakes like that one there, but also just to soften out the colour on the actual pink bit as well. And then we just do the same thing on the other side. So once again, Volupus Pink, turn around about there, wash brush, and soften out. So with that done, again, it's still a little bit wet because it's still drying, but what we're going to do is going to take some Guilliman Flesh. I'm going to use it to paint in the Ogre's face, well, and his head up here. Like that. What we're also going to do is going to colour in this head just down here as well. And with that done, what we're then going to do is going to take some Gryph-Charger Grey. I'm going to use this to paint in the two kind of severed hands Well, they're not kind of severed hands, they are severed hands. We're also going to use it to paint in this poor dead elf. Like so. And lastly, but by no means leastly, I'm going to use some Apothecary White to paint in this head, including the beard. Just like this. With all those grim trophies painted in, what we're now going to do is we're going to take some Terradon Turquoise. I'm going to use this to paint in the tassel on the spear. So with that Terradon Turquoise applied, I completely forgot to do it, but what we're going to do now is we're going to do some Wyldwood to paint in this head's hair. Just here like this. So with that done, what we're now going to do is going to use some thinned down iron warriors. I'm going to use this to paint in all of our silver details. Now there is rather a lot of them, so just take your time, work your way around the model, picking these out. So we've got areas like the armour, but not all of it. So again, check out your box art and product photography. Areas like this, here that are going to be silver. Got like the teeth on the shield, these large areas here on the shield, like that one there. We've got the spikes on his helmet, including the helmet itself. That's going to be silver, and all the various kind of little hooks and chains and various little accoutrements dotted around the model. Just like this sort of thing. So yeah, so just go around like this, picking all of these areas out that you want to be silver. We're going to do this shoulder pad here silver, not this one here. FYI. So with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to use some thinned down Runelord Brass. I'm going to use this to paint in our remaining metallics. So we've got the tongue here on the shield, for example. We've got the eyes on the shield as well. We've got that other shoulder guard. Got his trinkets hanging off his necklace. And we've got the, I guess, weight at the bottom of the spear. So with that done, it's now time to add some shades to the miniature. And the first one we're going to be using is Basilicanum Grey. We're going to be using this for all of our silver details. By getting this Basilicanum Grey all over, like this. And with that done, what we're then going to do is going to take some Fyreslayer Flesh. I'm going to use this to shade all of our Runelord Brass. With those shades applied, we've just got one more to do, and that is a roughly 2 parts contrast medium to 1 part Militarum Green mix. And we are going to apply this over the top of this face here, but not the beard. So what we want to do is just want to paint this green mix. Just like this. And next up, I'm going to take some black Templar. I'm going to use this to paint in the stitches on the skin flag. So with that done, our Killaboss on Great Gnashtoof is at what I would call a war hipster battle ready. Now I know he's quite a fair bit further along than that, but he is looking pretty awesome. So what we're going to do now is going to take him to the next stage by adding some highlights to the rest of the Killaboss himself. And well, the place we're going to start is with Ogryn Camo. We're going to be using this to highlight all of his skin. So we'll start down here on the foot. And what we want to do is just want to pick out all of the sharp edges in all of that flesh. So just picking out the kind of toes like this. Just adding a little highlight around each of the muscles as well. And with that done, what we're now going to do is going to use some Terradon Turquoise, just a small amount. I'm going to use this to paint in his bottom lip as well as around his eyes. So just very carefully. Just want to add this Terradon Turquoise like I'm doing here. And over his eyeballs and his bottom eyelids as well. And with that Terradon Turquoise applied, we then want to take some Volupus Pink. We want to apply this over his gums. And his tongue. And then next up, we want to use some Screaming Skull to paint in his teeth. Just like this. And then next up, we want to use some Gorse Blaster Green. I'm going to use this to highlight our Terradon Turquoise areas. On the face, so that bottom lip and those eyelids. Just like this. And then to finish off that face, what we want to do is we want to take a small dot of Evil Sunz Scarlet. We want to apply this over the eye. Just like that. So with that done, all of the Killaboss's flesh is now finished. So what we're going to do is we're going to move on and we're going to paint in, well, we're going to highlight all of his leather details now, and the colour we're going to be using is once again Steel Legion Drab. And just like on the Great Gnashtoof, we're just going to pick out all of the edges on all of his leather. So with that done, what we're now going to do is going to take some thinned down Karak Stone and use this as a little spot highlight on all of our leather once again, just like on the Great Gnashtoof. So we're just picking out the corners. Just like this. And so with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to use some thinned down Dawnstone. We're going to use this to highlight all of our black areas as well as all of our kind of, what was it, Wyldwood and Black Templar mix areas. So all of the strings and things like this, just picking out the strands like so. Similarly for all the stitches. Like that. And on all of the wood as well. I just want to pick out the grain. And with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to take some thinned down Iron Hand Steel. I'm going to use this to highlight all of our silver details. And with that done, what we're now going to do is going to use some Sycorax Bronze to highlight all of our Runelord Brass areas. Just like this. So with that done, all of our metallics are now highlighted. So what we're going to do is we're going to rattle through the last few things to do. And the first thing we're going to be using is Pallid Witch Flesh. I'm going to be using this to highlight all of our kind of dead heads and the skull down here. So what we're going to do, just like for example here on that hand, just going to pick out the sharpest points. Just like this. And with that done, what we're now going to do is take some Blood for the Blood God. We're going to apply this to any of the stumps, any of the kind of, well, dripping grossness. So we're going to add this Blood for the Blood God here, underneath this head, like this. Bring it down that drip as well, like that. And bring it down here as well. Same for this bit here, like this. And you can add as much or as little as you like. And what we're also going to do is going to add some of this around his eyes. Kind of trickling out of his nose as well. like that. And with that done, we then want to take some Cyberite Green and use this to highlight the tassel on the spear, just by picking out all those strands once again. Just like this. And next up, I'm going to add some tiny dots of Black Templar in the middle of the eyeballs on this head. Just like this. So with that done, we've just got two things left to do. We've got to do some highlights on the splash banner, and then we've got some verdigris to paint in. So the colour we're going to be using for the highlights on the flesh banner is Flayed 1 Flesh. And really what we want to do is we just want to stick to kind of the sharpest points in this skin. Just like this. With that Flayed 1 Flesh highlight applied to both sides of the banner, just as a little spot highlight, what we're now going to do is we're going to take some Terradon Turquoise, and we are going to do that verdigris that I was talking about. So what we do is we take this Terradon Turquoise and just around certain areas, such as on the studs, just want to add this Terradon Turquoise around them. Don't want to do it on all of them. Just do it to taste. I'm doing this on the Gnashtoof as well. And lastly, but by no means leastly, we're going to take a small amount of Gore-Grunta Green, and we're just going to add a little highlight over the top, kind of more like a kind of dot around those Terradon Turquoise bits that we've just added. Nice and subtle. So with that done, our Killaboss on Great Gnashtoof is finished. All that's left to do is his base. Now I'm not going to go into how I paint all of the base because, well, I'm going to be following the How to Paint Swamp Bases tutorial that we've already got available here on YouTube, and I'm going to be following a very similar thing to the Yndrasta base as well for the stone. I'm using Basilicanum Grey here on the stone without the mix that I did on Yndrasta, but yeah, basically complete the base however you want. But as I say, I'm going to be using Basilicanum Grey here on the stone. I'm going to be using Militarum Green on all the vines and all the grasses, and then I'm going to be completing the rest of the base in the same style as the swamp base. So yeah, see you at the end.
Ooh, boy, that was an adventure. Yes, it's a very complex model, I'm not going to lie to you. There's a lot of things going on here, a lot of different techniques that make painting something like this quite a challenge to initially take on, but using the contrast paints does go some way to making it a lot easier. And I think layering down in terms of glazing it down or building up that colour to the darkness really works for the Great Gnashtoof, and I'm so over the moon with that flesh. I think it looks absolutely incredible. If you enjoyed this video, you love the channel, and you want to support me further like these legends and bosses on the screen before you, you can do so. Head to patreon.com/warhipster or head to ko-fi.com/warhipster. Alternatively, you can now become a YouTube channel member by heading to the channel page and clicking on the join button just here, just like these absolute bosses have done. And if you just want to shoot me a little thanks, just because you really love this video, you can click on the thanks button just below this video. Don't forget to share it, like it, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And to make sure you stay up to date, don't forget to click the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Happy wargaming.